One is red. The other's yellow. But which one is right for you, fellow? Hey there, I'm John. This is Two Brothers RC, and this is the showdown between the FMS Avanti 90mm and the Freewing Aries. They're both powerful jets and they fly great for specific purposes, but only one of them is great overall, while the other is more of a gimmicky hovering machine, at least in my opinion. So let's dive into it and find out together. Before we start, the two jets are being compared with an identical setup. They're both flying with a Spectrum AR-10360T on the same radio programming, where applicable, but with different gains tuned to each aircraft. So, yes, the FMS Avanti does have thrust vectoring installed. We'll be comparing ease of flying, maneuverability, high alpha and hovering, ease of assembly, takeoff and landing, flight time, and whether I think they're worth owning. So, let's kick off this tier ranking by talking ease of flying. Ease of flying is a direct result of the center of gravity of any plane. The more you shift the center of gravity aft, the more aggressive an airplane becomes to fly. Get it too far aft and it becomes a major handful, if not a pile of busted debris on the ground that needs to be replaced to fill the void in your heart that you usually try filling with lots of stuff that you don't need. 99% of every airplane released today is either nose-heavy out of the box or has a nose-heavy center of gravity recommendation in the manual, or both. This is for a couple of reasons. Companies don't want you to fail on your maiden flight, and they also don't want to be held liable in case you crash solely based on the recommended center of gravity. So they're going to recommend, and generally design, airplanes to fly positively stable to avoid issues.
Nice. Not nice at all, buddy.
Oh, shoot.
Aries comes out of the box with a very aggressive center of gravity, and the manual even recommends an aggressive CG as well. It's the only jet I've flown that forces me to slam the packs all the way to the front of the plane. The damn thing even comes with nose weights to counter its natural aggressive balance point. It's basically a Dunning-Kruger test for model aviation. If you think you know a lot about flying, you'll find out very quickly if your knowledge is good or if you've been, misinformed. Aries' aggressive balancing makes it do basically anything you want it to do, but that ability comes at a cost. You have to know how to fly airplanes that are almost, or are, literally tail heavy. The gyro setup that I recommend makes it flyable, but you can still put yourself into horrible situations if you're not incredibly careful. By comparison, Avanti with thrust vectoring comes out of the box both nose-heavy and with a recommended center of gravity that's also nose-heavy. So it's a bit more difficult to get Avanti to be harder to fly than Aries. Avanti is also more stable than Aries is, even with a similar balance point, so it's easier to fly in general. This doesn't mean that it's a better jet than Aries, it just means that it's more stable, though it can be pushed into extreme maneuvers too. Just not as easily as Aries can, because Aries is lighter and also easier to shift the center of gravity to a ridiculously unstable degree. Compared strictly in terms of ease of flying, Aries earns a C, while Avanti earns an A. Next up, let's talk maneuverability. It's very clear that Aries is maneuverable, very much so, but I'm not just looking for whether it can do flips and spins in this tier. I'm also looking for whether those spins and flips actually look good and feel good to perform. And I gotta say, they don't. Aries requires a lot of finesse on the sticks to get it to perform like Avanti. Unlike Aries, you tell Avanti to do something and it doesn't just spaz out when you try it. Aries has a tendency to flip in random directions when you tell it to backflip. And it fights your flat spin inputs unless you're really good on the sticks and know how to force it into a flat spin. Sure, it looks cool, but the jet's propensity to randomly change directions, likely caused by the strong torque the motor produces, gets old very fast. Flipping and spinning something around is more fun when it's actually doing what you're telling it to do. This is where Avanti shines in comparison. It does what you tell it, though it sometimes has a tendency to spaz out just a wee bit. But it usually takes several backflips before this happens, not like Aries where it just spazzes out on the first flip. Avanti overall feels more planted in the sky and is more enjoyable to maneuver for me, not just in post-stall, but throughout the flight envelope. It's not quite as maneuverable as Aries, but the maneuverability it demonstrates is far more controllable and far less likely to randomly change directions while flipping and find yourself planting it into the ground. Aries earns a B, while Avanti earns an S. High Alpha and hovering is our next tier. Spoiler alert, this is one of the tiers where Aries is going to completely, utterly on Avanti. It's so much better than the FMS Avanti that it's unfair to even have this tier as a comparison.
Got it.
If you were to do nothing but hover Aries on the setup I demoed in the review, you'd be getting the most out of this jet. It is excellent at this. There is no finer EDF for hovering. It hovers so damn well, I removed the wheels a while back and turned it into a hand launcher and hand grabber
Got it.
to increase the thrust-to-weight ratio. I even went bush flying with it in the woods, which was unwise for reasons you're seeing on screen. I also took it to a couple of lakes, and it's absolutely breathtaking to see it throw water around. It is unbelievable how well this plane flies in this configuration. Now, can Avanti hover? Yes, but only briefly, and it has almost no punch-out. Even on best-in-class SMC high-voltage batteries, it just can't perform hovers like Aries can without ripping it apart to reduce weight. Now, it does do some exceptional Harrier passes. Unlike Aries, you don't need to do any adjustments to forward programming to fix the wing rocking. I'll cover the Aries changes later on, but for now, Avanti is a contender in this tier only because it's absolutely amazing at flying high angles of attack. It can do true Harrier passes without a hint of wing rock, unlike Aries, but it can't hover. So, with that in mind, Aries earns an S, while Avanti earns a B. Ease of assembly is our next tier, and it's probably our fastest tier too. While Avanti isn't hard to put together, it's just not favorably comparable to the next generation Freewing assembly and setup. 2 rods slide into Aries, you slide the wings on, you click 4 buttons and you're friggin' done. Avanti requires 2 rods and 4 screws. While that's certainly not hard to do, you can easily put together 5 different Aries in the time it takes to assemble one Avanti. Aries earns an S here, while Avanti earns an A. Takeoff and landing is our next tier. Neither jet really comes ahead in this category when you judge them by reasonable metrics. They both take off very well, and they can both be hand-launched, flown off pavement, or flown off grass. Neither jet has any nasty tendencies while landing or taking off when using my recommended gyro-stabilized thrust vectoring setup with the files on our Discord server linked below. Similarly, neither jet has any issues with landing either. If either of them stall on approach, high gains coupled with gyro-stabilized thrust vectoring makes it automatically correct the wing drop, assuming that you still have thrust applied. Both jets can do great wheelie landings, but only Avanti does exceptional donuts on pavement and sweet spinouts. Aries tries, but the gear struts are too weak to handle donuts, and the tires get scraped up and messed up. Both jets earn an S here. Flight time is where these two jets start to pull away from each other again. Avanti gets 5-minute average flights on an 8-cell setup, including high alpha and Harrier passes. Aries gets 3 to 5 minutes at best with hovering, which makes Avanti earn an S while Aries earns a B. And let's be real, if you're buying Aries to fly it as a sport jet, you're missing the entire point of this jet. Might as well just go ahead and buy yourself a regular Avanti with no thrust vectoring at that point and save the money. Also, since there's this persistent myth that EDF jets destroy batteries, let me just say, no, they don't, you do. Fly with voltage telemetry, which is covered in the card at the top right, and stop running your packs under 3.5 volts per cell to avoid overheating and damaging them. If you're flying on 8 cells, don't run them under 29 volts, and you're good to go. Here's a clip of some new SMC 6000 lipos right after flying for a couple of minutes at the lake.
Got it! So we flew it on a pair of 6000 HCl HP packs from SMC. My heart is literally racing right now. I feel like I just got off on my road bike on a downhill stretch. We are at, holy crap, we are at 3.8 volts per cell after about 2.5 minutes of hovering and other goofy stuff. We are out here at the lake flying this jet in places it has no business flying in, and it's so controllable on the setup that I'm demonstrating.
Now, for whether they're worth owning. If that's not super subjective, I don't know what is. But hey, this is my opinion, and here's what I think. Avanti? Absolutely worth owning. It does all of the great sport jet stuff that you know and love, and it can briefly hover and does amazing Harrier passes. It takes off and lands like a dream, and it can't stall if you use my setup and have thrust applied. Don't at me in someone else's video and say that I said it's impossible to stall or crash. I said that it's unstallable on my setup. There's a huge distinction between stock setups and what you're seeing here. If you want to fly Avanti like this, hop on Discord from the link below and grab the setup file and learn to program yours just like mine. As for Aries, well, it's a mixed bag. Being able to hover is great, but I also hover without a jet too. In fact, I pretty much hover stuff all the time. 3D planes, bush planes, cargo planes. You get the idea by this point. It's fun, but if you don't have a hover fetish like I do, I would suggest getting Avanti instead. It does more than Aries, and what it does do, it does better than Aries. If you only care about hovering, Aries is the better jet between the two. Otherwise, Avanti absolutely floors it where it matters, in ease of flying and maneuverability. So, in my view, Avanti is an S, while Aries is a close second with an A. Also, to compare both jets completely, you should also consider the price point differences. Avanti is $600 without thrust vectoring on the 6-cell setup. Putting thrust vectoring and an 8-cell motor into it costs an additional $185 for a grand total of $785. No, you don't have to change the ESC either. For $85 less, you can spend $700 and get Aries in an 8-cell configuration out of the box with thrust vectoring stock. However, you can get discounts on Avanti using the code FMS2NR for 5% off. This still costs more than Aries, but not by much. If you prefer Aries, get Aries. It's not a bad jet, it does a lot of cool stuff, and it's a lot of fun. I just don't care for how it flies outside of hovering and Harriers. If you prefer Avanti, be prepared to spend a little bit more on it, but you get a sport jet that dominates in the sport jet arena. Back to Aries. Before we wrap up this vid, I got in touch with Miguel Alvarez, a programmer at Spectrum, who recommended changing the gyro filter from 2 to 1, along with setting the frame rate of the servos in forward programming to 5.5 milliseconds to get the jet to stabilize faster and more accurately. Also, to use 100 roll lock rate to help stabilize it even further. It's still wing rocks, it's just not as bad as it used to be, so this is a very positive change overall. To make these adjustments yourself and find the settings that you need to change, go ahead and enter forward programming, select gyro settings, then select next at the bottom right. Change the gyro filter level from 2 to 1 to increase the sensitivity of the gyro and make it more accurate. But be careful doing this because it can cause issues if your plane is prone to vibration. Then go into other settings and change the frame rates of the servos to 5.5 milliseconds. This won't work with every servo out there, but it does work with the stock Freewing servos. This makes them operate much faster in stabilization. Then go into gyro settings, AS3X settings, and change the roll lock rate to 100. These new settings made a huge difference in how Aries handled in low speed, high angle of attack flight, but it still wing rocks a little bit, so there's only so much a gyro can do to counter the torque of the motor. Reference the Aries vid linked in the card at the top right for the setup info, and the setup file itself is on our Discord server. As always, huge thanks goes out to our channel members on twoRowsRC.com/supporters. A very special thanks goes out to our mega fans, Sarasota RC Squadron, Michael Smith, JR Man, Todd, N411X, and Jeff Baker, along with our Ultra fan, TBRC fan. You guys, as always, kick so much ass. Coming up soon will be the Extra NG from Hobby King. It just came out recently, they got it over to me, and someone said it's too expensive. There's no accounting for how expensive someone thinks something is, but I'm gonna say it, this thing is totally worth the price. And it's less expensive than comparable offerings from another company that happens to sell similar foam airplanes. See you guys next week.